a bit of a YouTube streak here today. So there's another video today. And this one's a little bit different to what you've been used to seeing from me. I talk a lot in other videos about the advertising types, you know, the marketing strategy, and also about things like, you know, how to use various aspects of social media. Today, I'm delving back into some of my past history. And this was prompted by a comment that I make from time to time on social media posts when I'm commenting on posts. We were talking the other day about communication styles. Now, history of this is that back in 1988, I was headhunted out of pathology. I was a pathology technician at a large lab in Sydney, headhunted out of that to go work for Merck Sharp and Dohme. At that stage, Merck Sharp and Dohme were the #1 pharmaceutical company in the world. They were a Fortune 100 company, so the top 100 of the Fortune listing in the Americas, international company, very large. And it was my foray into sales. I didn't do a lot of marketing initially with them because they had a huge marketing team, and God forbid if any of the salespeople thought about marketing. But what they did, which was absolutely incredibly fundamental to the way I look at lots of things in the world, both personally and professionally, is they taught me the 4 key communication styles. And this is related to the classic Myers-Briggs material that you see around, introvert, extrovert, and all sorts of other subcategories. But what this does is it takes that and it applies it to more about verbal communication. Verbal communication. So if I'm one-on-one with a person, what it did is it taught me how to know what my innate communication style is, and to be able to very quickly assess what the person's innate communication style was, and then adapt my communication style to better match theirs, so that ultimately I won more sales, and we had an overall better communication going on. It becomes rather difficult when you're doing this in groups, because in groups it's a very, very different dynamic, but it works incredibly well when you're one-on-one, or even one to two, you know, a couple of people. And over the years, so that was sort of 1988, I started, 88 was when I did the first week in doing this, and the first week was more about what was my communication style. Went through a lot of testing, worked out, you know, what my innate communication style was, learned a lot about myself, and then we did, you know, a lot of role playing on how to then take our communication style and adapt it to others. And then we went out in the field and we tested it out on the field, and we were checked on how we were testing it out in the field. And then 6 or 8 months or so later, we came back in and we did the second part of it, which was a real top up. And honestly, that was 88, 89. I say I use this. To be perfectly honest, I don't, because it depends on whether I choose to use it. But if I'm in a communication situation and I really want to get the best out of that communication, then I go back to these fundamentals. Now, whether that's a simple thing as standing, you know, across the counter from a checkout chick at Woolworths, to, you know, selling and doing business development work, which I've done a lot of, it doesn't really matter. It's exactly the same principle. So let me show you what the what the 4 quadrants are. I'm just going to get rid of me. And I need to just double check where I got this material from. I'll give you this link in the show notes, but I did a sort of quick thing across the internet. Why reinvent the wheel when you need to? And this was sort of like the principle that that this is drawn off. I honestly don't know where this particular lady, who's Astrid, is a lady in the US. I don't know where she got it off. There's certainly, it's been around since the 60s. It's not new by any means. So I sort of based my talk today on you know, this, and this will go, because I don't want to sit here for hours and carry on about this, although I'm quite capable of doing it. I'm going to give you this link and you can actually go and read more here. But let's have a look at what they are. So there are four, and I'm going to take this off. There are 4 key quadrants. 1, 2, 3, 4. Analytical, driver, amiable, expressive. And from time to time, I've seen them called all sorts of different things. If you go and do any of Dan Locke's classes, he calls them by gem names. Can't remember what they are now. Ruby, I think this is Ruby. I can't remember now. But it's essentially the same thing. This, I have seen this reinvented so many times, it's not funny. So there are four main styles. Up the top, if you're closer up here, an analytical driver, you tend to be more task orientated. If you're down the bottom, an amiable or expressive, you tend to be more people orientated. If you're over on this side, driver or expressive, you're more extroverted. So you tend to tell people things rather than ask people things. If you're over on this side, then you tend to be more, so if you're analytical, amiable, you tend to be more introverted. So you tend to ask more questions. Now, to complicate matters, when you're actually typed, you can have your baseline. So you can be a baseline analytical, a baseline driver, a baseline expressive, a baseline amiable. But you can also have facets of the other three, or one other, or two other. It's not quite as simple as you are just an analytical. So if you actually think about this, I am going to get off this screen for a minute. This circle, and let's make it not quite so big. This circle can have you analytical. So if this is you over here, you can be, now that's a true analytical. That is classic. Let's think about say an accountant, where they really they don't do well around people. They're incredibly introverted. They are incredibly task focused and orientated, and their life is about facts, numbers, facts, and they will drive you insane because you've got to satisfy all of the facts that they require before they can make a decision. So that's where this becomes important in a sales context. If you go to an analytical and you're, say, a driver, so if the circle was over here and you're coming way up there, you're a driver. If your circle's down here, you're an expressive. If your circle's are, whoops, I didn't mean to move that. If your circle's over here, you're an amiable. But what happens if your circle is more like here? Well, your baseline is amiable, but you might have expressive sitting over the top of that. Or what happens if your circle is, say, here? So yeah, it's probably more here, but it's more inclined down towards the, it's a bit hard to do on a two-dimensional structure. It's more inclined sort of around about here. Then you can be a baseline analytical, but you've got expressive features sitting over the top of that. And that's me. I am a baseline analytical. When I'm really making important decisions like purchase of a house, purchase of a car, investing money, really big life, then I move to being incredibly analytical, and I drive people insane. I remember when I was purchasing my property up here, I actually went to council, made a photocopy of all of the council zoning areas, and broke down the zoning into what I can do in what zoning area, because we've got sort of rural here, we've got rural res, we've got residential, and then we've got sort of farm zoning, and like the numbers coming out of my head were just crazy. And then I went to the real estate agents and said, right, I want a property that I can do to buy, that I was trying to build a dog kennels. And the zoning has to be this, and it can only be this roads to this roads to this roads. And I literally drove them insane. The same way I drive car salesmen insane. But when I'm in my more day-to-day community role, I know that the analytical part of me is not so well liked, that I'm too task orientated and I'm too introverted. So I'm good at bringing out the more expressive side of me. The hands get used a lot. The facial expressions get used a lot. I am more people orientated. And instead of asking people everything, I tend to want to tell, or I want them to talk to me. And as a salesperson, what the ideal is you need to be almost square in the middle of here. So you can always have your baseline. I am an expressive analytical. That's my baseline. But I can choose to be more driverish, be more amiable, or be more expressive. And so I actually want to hang around. That was why that was quite big. I actually want to hang around this bit in the middle as a good salesperson so that I can be a chameleon. I can be what the person I am communicating to, usually in the sales context, I can be what they need to be. And so I'm either going to hand the analytical, if they're an analytical, I'm going to ask them what facts do they need to know, what information do they need to know, and I'm going to feed them out that information. I'm going to let them tell me what information they want. If I'm talking to a driver, and the classic, we used to do a lot of this, I used to come across a lot of drivers as a medical representative, medical salesperson, particularly if you go and see specialists as a salesperson. And medical people tend to be really bad communicators. That's a generalization, I appreciate, but they're really bad communicators. They're generally not taught to communicate. And the higher up the ladder they get, like particularly your top specialists, their communication skills are woeful. And I distinctly remember the drivers I used to come across when I was a sales rep. So I would sometimes sit for hours in a waiting room, waiting for a booked appointment. But not necessarily even that booked appointment might get pushed back and back and back as their waiting room got full. So it might have been a 1 o'clock appointment, but they didn't care about that. And you know how many doctors run on time. And I'd get into front of these driver doctors, and basically I classically remember one guy, I made a real mistake one day. I went in and he had this beautiful print. One of the other companies had been giving out prints of the 1988 bicentennial in Sydney Harbour. And I went into his surgery. There was that print up there. Unfortunately, a few days after that event on Sydney Harbour, my cousin committed suicide. And that was the last time I saw her. And of course, I got very upset. I saw that and I started to go into the story about her. And like, he just looked at me and he says, I don't care. Tell me what you've got to say. You've got another 2 minutes left out of the 5 that I was going to give you. Say what you've got to say and get out. Oops. That's your classic driver. They're going to tell you what they want to know. They're very task orientated. They're very powerfully orientated, control orientated. They work only on the big picture stuff. And you've got to say what they want to hear, or basically you want to find out what they want to hear. Answer that short, sharp, succinct. Hello, it's this. Anything else you need? Right, good, I'm gone. Amiables on the other hand, they're very people orientated. They tend to ask. They want to talk a lot. They want appreciation. They want to be appreciated for who they are. They want time. The classic amiables. There was again back in my sales rep days. There was a doctor at Wentworthville. Still remember Jock Singh, gorgeous guy, lovely guy. And Jock, you never talk to Jock about products, never ever. The classic opening line with Jock was always about, so how'd your footy team go last week? You know, we would talk about football and we would talk about all sorts of other things. And, you know, how's the family getting on, Jock? You know, I had a really fantastic relationship with him. And then we sort of get to the very, I said, oh, by the way, I was really meaning to tell you about blah, blah, you know, and just quickly give him a little bit of the sales spiel. And how are you going for samples? Do you need any samples of any questions you've got about the products we're selling at the moment? So that's your amiable. You see a lot of amiables in the not-for-profit sector, also in the areas where you've got like, they're your classic, oh, there's starving kids in Cambodia, or we're going to save the tigers in, you know, name a place. They're into all of that sort of stuff, and they need time, and they're not about what's in it for them. They're about how can they help the world. Expressives, and I get on really well with the analyticals and the expressives and the drivers. Drivers I can get on really well with because I can tend to be quite a bit driverish at times. The expressives are your classic party animal. They are people persons. They like to tell. They like to be yeah, your fashionistas. They want popularity, they want recognition, they want to be seen as the movers and the shakers. They want to be seen as the first to have the latest of whatever. You see a lot of expressives in the fashion influencers, and they tend to be very flowery, and it's sorry, no, flowery is not the right word. Very expressive. Expressive is a perfect description for them. They tend to be very, very exaggerated in everything they do. Like, it's the most beautiful red dress I have ever seen, or this is the most gorgeous red dress, and all my girlfriends are just going to be drop dead jealous when they see me looking $1 million in this. So that's your classic expressive. Now, that's the thing, you've got to, when you're selling, and if you've come across someone that you've never met before, you got to very quickly work out which one of these they are, or which combination of these they are, and you've got to deal with combinations if there's mixed things going on, and you've got to adapt how you're selling very, very rapidly. And that's why a really good salesperson, Banjo, can you please come on? A really good salesperson needs to stay around this center. So they need to be able to go right up here, right across here, right down here, and sometimes like literally within the one conversation, particularly if you're in groups. So where it also becomes important in this is who's going to be your fast or slow adopters of products, particularly if they're new products, new products to a new niche, or a new reiteration of something that's already been out there, or you've got an existing product line and you're bringing new products into it, or you're bringing in new flavors. Think about the ice cream people, where every second day, or the chocolate places, where like every second day you'll see a Snickers ice cream or Snickers biscuits, or you know, all those sort of the ones that are really going to adopt fast are these two sections, your drivers and your expressives, but for different reasons. Your expressives are going to adopt very fast because they want to be seen as the movers. They want to be seen as the leaders, the people that actually everybody goes, oh my God, where did you get that handbag? Wow, I've never seen anything like it. Or those shoes, wow, where did you get them from? They're just so different. And they love that applause that comes to them for being the fast adopters of something new, finding something different that nobody else has. The drivers have a slightly different motivation. They're fast adopters too. So it was great when we were in the pharmaceutical land. Basically, if I had a new product, I picked all my drivers out of my group. We used to see about 300 or 400 doctors in our territories. So I'd pick all the drivers out, and all I basically had to say, brand new, amazing, it does this, 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 and this. Want to try it? And they try it because they want to be seen to be controlling. They want the power. They want to be solving big problems and big challenges. And they will then, they're fantastic. Then they will go out then and be, they're the sort of the mentors within the world. They're the ones that, because they're doing it, everybody else will follow them. Expressives are fast adopters because they don't necessarily want people to follow them. They want to be seen to be the leaders of the pack. Unfortunately, the analyticals are your very slow adopters because they need lots of facts and figures. When we had a new product to launch, basically, they would want all the information, but then they'd say, well, how many other people are using this? And how many users have been used for? And what have been the results in? And like, they will bury you in a mountain of mountains and mountains of questions. And if you don't have the answers to that questions and they're not getting sufficient information, then they're not going to adopt. So they were the sort of people we went out to last. The amiables, they have an adoption speed which is variable. So they can be fast adopters if it's a really, really, really sort of, something that's going to change the world. So, if you go to them with a, please give me $10 to save the Sumatran tigers in Sumatra because there's only 10 of them left in the world, and the world is going to be a worse place because they're going to be becoming extinct breed, they will adopt fairly fast to that. If you tap into their intrinsic needs to be sincerely appreciate and to better the world. But then at other times, if you don't tap into those specific sort of niches, then they really don't care. If it's something very general, they're not terribly fussed about the products they buy. You can get them with things like, this is, you know, biodegradable, or this is made from recycled material. That this amiables, that's who they're going after. So the marketers are going after when they're using things like biodegradable, you know, recycled materials, vegan, not tested on animals. That's who those groups are going after. So adoption is about how you present the product or the service, and also the underlying motivation of the person to buy it. Now the other bit, so that's been all about sort of one-to-one and talking, verbal communication. The other thing is we need to address these personality types when we're thinking about online assets. The expressive, the amiable, the analytical, the driver, they're going to want to see different things in the online assets they're looking at. Now, if you go out and the homepage of your website is nothing but facts and figures and in-depth information, and this is why I have trouble when I'm doing my own website, because I want to tell everybody everything. I want to tell everybody everything about why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how many options they have. Whereas the driver, they want an extremely pared down website. They want to, you know, here's the problem. You know, here's what I know your problem is. Unfortunately, they can't tell you what they want when it's not one-on-one. But you've got to go in knowing what it is that are the questions that are going to be in their head. And they don't often have many questions, drivers, but they want to see things fast. They want really pared down. They want to know how it's going to fix the big problems and challenges, and they want to know what's it going to do for their status. These are your classic BMW and Mercedes drivers of the world. The expressives are going to want to know about what people are going to think. The expressives love social proof. Like, this is a unique, you know, dress that's only worn by, you know, 10 people in the world. Or this is the dress that was worn by, I don't know, name a starlet on the recent Oscars. And we're only going to make 5 of these, and you can have one of the 5. And these people respond really well to being asked to give you social proof back. So, you know, show us you in the dress. Get on our social media. They're great. If you can get an expressive on your social media, and you give them an opportunity to give you user-generated content in the true old-fashioned sense of the word, not in the current sense of the word, they're fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. They're the ones that are going to share the photo of them to all their millions of followers. This is why they make such good influencers. Amiables are going to want time. They're going to want the classic way to get to an amiable with your online content is to get them into your newsletter signups and get material coming back to them, but make the material that they're reading very specific to what their needs are. Their needs for appreciation, and their needs to be saving the world. And I'm sounding very condescending when I'm saying it the way I'm saying it, because I am over exaggerating it. You know, you've got to keep these in your head when you're designing a website. And before you're designing a website or your social media content or your copy, what you've got to do is you've got to know which of these 4 are going to be more highly represented in your target clients. If you're doing a, you know, save the whales or save the Sumatran tiger, then you're going to have an awful lot of amiables in your target clients. If you're high fashion, then you're going to have a lot of expressives. If you're launching the latest status symbol, you know, the classic luxury watch, or you know, expensive car, or you know, the yacht. I'm thinking like the yachties of this world, the ones that are moving in that higher social level, then you're going to have a lot of drivers. If you're launching like an IT or an app that's really going to give someone a lot of data, then the analyticals are going to be the people that you need to write your copy for. And I always try to put material, so I'm going to write copy for my main avatar, but I'm also going to make sure that the analyticals of this world are satisfied by being able to go somewhere else on my website to get down to that fine detail that they need. Your drivers and expressives, they don't care. They don't really want to dig around on your website to find the details, but the analyticals will. So I really want to make sure that the analyticals are going to be able to click through to the finer details. But I'm not going to do that at the expense. I'm not going to put the finer details up the very top at the expense of these other two groups, because again, I've got to know who my target clients are. I'll put the link is down here to this blog that I found that was very good, because it goes into this in all more depth. I'll put the link to that in the show notes, in the description under the bottom. But so, you know, you've got to adapt to their style, adapt to the analytical style, adapt to the driver's style, adapt to the expressive, adapt to the amiable. And then there's some really good things you can do in terms of, you know, how to work on helping you adapt to the other styles. A great thing, and this is what we did when we were learning all this, we basically were typed into our style, and then we were put in you know, mock-ups where because this was there was only about a group of 12 of us on this course, we knew each other fairly well. So after we'd done this material at the very beginning, it was quite easy to know what the style was. But then we were judged on our ability to adapt our style to what the other person on the other side of the role play, what their style was. And then, you know, assessed on that. And of course, then I went out in the field, and then for 6 months out in the field, that was a big part of the assessment that was being made on me. They, you know, all basically, it's not hard to tell I'm an expressive analytical. Anyone who's done any of this sort of work can tell that. So my bosses would be sitting with me out in the field, and we'd come out of the call and they'd say, so what personality type do you think that person you were sitting with was like? And we had to literally assess it within 2 minutes, seconds flat. And then when I went in to do Dan Locke's close the school in, I don't know, during COVID, that's when I did that because I was bored. We did a lot of role playing on Discord. Same, very, very much a similar thing. And people marveled at the way that I could jump from one personality style into another personality style, sometimes within the course of the same role play. I was a devil if I was role playing the person that they were trying to sell to, because one minute I'd be an expressive, and then I would do a complete flip and become an analytical, and then a driver, and then an amiable, and like they honestly didn't know where they were going. It wasn't fair, but it was a really classic of how fast you can react to what it is that's coming at you. What the personality type is that you're sitting with. So let's assume that you were sitting in or not necessarily in a group discussion, but let's say that the wife's been the person that's subscribed to your discovery call, and the wife's come in, and the wife's pretty amiable, or maybe amiable expressive, and you get to the crunch and you're trying to close that person, and the next thing she says is, oh, but no, my husband's the decision maker. For starters, you should have asked her who the decision maker was before you got to that point. But, you know, and I say, okay, so, you know, Mrs. Smith, is your husband available? Oh, yes, just a minute. Harold, come here, please, Harold. And in comes Harold, and Harold might be a classic deep driver or deep analytical, and bang, your whole sales style has had to flip immediately, because he's the decision maker. And he's not going to respond the same way. You know, you might have been having a fantastic conversation with Mrs. Smith, and she was all ready to go because it fitted in with her needs to be, you know, sincerely appreciated, and to, you know, and be biodegradable, and blah, 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 blah. Whereas the analytical is going to come in and going to say, but hang on, you know, you've only half the time the analytical is sitting there listening to the conversation without you knowing it. The analytical is going to come in and say, yeah, but I now have 50 million other questions. And I certainly drive discovery call people insane when I do that. I came in and said, so there was, in fact, a Discovery call I was in the other day for a course I'm looking at, and they opened with, here's how much money you're going to make in the first 6 months. And you know what? Money money will drive an analytical. It will drive a drive an expressive much easier, but money doesn't drive an analytical. And I went, hang on, you haven't given me enough information for me to make the decision. They said, but you're going to be able to make. And I went, I don't care what I'm going to be able to make. You know, I have a million questions you haven't answered. And that, in fact, happened last week. I'm looking at same course, but from two separate providers, and they've both made the same mistake. They both come in and said, let's look at the figures. You know, you can make 2% of a $790,000 sale, and that's, you know, 15,000, 13,000, whatever that figure is. And I'm like, so what? But, you know, but what's the nitty gritty here? You know, what do I have, you know, what's the terms and conditions? I want to see the terms and conditions. I want to know what I'm obligated for and what you're obligated for over the next, you know, 2 years, which is what one of them was proposing. And I want to know what is all the steps and what's it going to cost me. It's a complex course that I'm signing up for. You know, what is it going to cost me? And like, I've driven them insane, but that's okay. I am classic analytical when I need to be. So I hope that's useful. Feel free in the comments to make any comments if you'd like to know a little bit more. And I encourage you to start to read a bit more about this. This is only a quick blog that I found when I was looking this up to give you some deeper information. But there's more out there. And start to sort of think to yourself when you're out and about, what is that? What is that person? I'll see also if I can find the link to there's usually free online if I can find it. There's usually a link to questions that you get asked for it to come up with which one of these, where are you in this quadrant setup? Right, so I hope you found that enjoyable. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell. I'm not necessarily, I'm doing a lot of topics on YouTube, and I'm doing a lot of topics across live to my Facebook channel lately, but it's to no particular rhyme nor reason. I just encourage you to get on there and follow those channels, and then you'll be notified when things go live. And then there's also a lot of other material that you can see that's been live over the years. Most of it isn't dated terribly badly. Some of the behind the scenes stuff might not necessarily be 100% up to date, but I think it's still pretty relevant. All right. Thank you very much for listening.